Hello and welcome to this week's lecture. This week we're going to talk about annotated bibliographies, pathfinders, and LibGuides as a way to get you set up for your final assignment. I'm also going to talk about the reference interview and give you new due dates for the reference interview and give you some more information on what you'll be doing. So first of all, annotated bibliographies, pathfinders, and LibGuides, these are different names that these have been called at different times. And basically they're a reference tool that includes a bunch of sources, and they can be in the form of an annotated bibliography, which is just basically it can be a piece of paper with resources on it that you've written something about each resource. It can be in a trifold brochure on paper that you have, again, annotated in some way. Pathfinders, again, also annotated. They're usually collected around a subject. Pathfinders and bibliographies were originally in paper. LibGuide is basically an electronic version of this, and you are going to create a LibGuide this semester based on a topic that you choose. So the technology for the LibGuide is actually really quite easy to use. It's not terribly difficult, and you're going to be getting an account email from somebody at William Patterson with information about how to get onto creating a LibGuide, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So this reference tool can also include reader's advisory. So really when you develop a list of books for a particular topic, say Halloween books, if you've developed a list of Halloween books to put out in your library for somebody to take away with them, if you put it on your website as a page with a bunch of covers and a little description of each book that's on there so people can choose. If you've done a display, that's kind of a virtual bibliography. If you've done a display, and all of those are readers, kind of a part of readers advisory, because you're helping students pick out what they want to read. And it can also be reference. It can be sort of a reference type of interaction. I like to think of these kinds of materials as virtual collaboration with teachers. So one of the examples I'm going to show you of one of these LibGuides that a student did for here, it was interesting because she was an English teacher, and after she finished her LibGuide, she's like, I wish somebody had done this for me as I was teaching this subject as we went along, because it can be very useful to have all the materials, and you can do, especially now with doing it online, not only can you include easily websites and links to clips of video or full video if it's something that's in a public domain, and other ebooks, links to what's in your catalog. You can really pull a lot of information about a topic together, and though you might not be collaborating with the teacher by being in the same room with the same class, you are helping them out with their class and giving them additional resources, useful resources that they can use, and making them aware of what your library has to offer. So I consider these collaboration as something that can be very hard to do, and I consider these a way to begin collaborating with your teachers if you need an in with them, or if you need to get them used to turning to you for resources. And the nice thing is, once they're created, as I'll show you, they're available to be, you can just add to it, update it year after year, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel or waste paper printing new stuff out. It can be an introduction to information sources for students or teachers around a particular subject, and a starting place for research. You can give students a list of places where they're going to find information on the particular topic that they're doing for research. So some examples. I'm going to talk a lot about LibGuides. They are a paid, you do have to pay to use the format. So I'm going to first show you LiveBinder, which is another way to do it online. If you go to websites, you can also do this on a website. If you have pages you can add to in on your website, in your library, you can do it. If you have no technology, you certainly can do it on paper. That's still absolutely legitimate. And the nice thing, I still like paper because people will take it up and bring it with them. So I always used to have a lot of trifolds or printed out things for parents when I was in the library so that they could take home. One of the things that everybody liked was you can go on ALA and find a printout of all of the Caldecotts and all of the Newberries, even though I don't suggest using all of them. Sometimes teachers or parents wanted the convenience of having it on paper. We did, between Harry Potter books, we were doing, you know, what to read while you're waiting for the next Harry Potter book, or if you liked, try. And so it can certainly be done on paper, but it can also be done electronically. And LiveBinders, if you haven't used them before, are a free tool online that you can create tabs, much like, as you'll see, a LibGuide looks like. It's a little less flexible, but if you don't have access to the LibGuides, this is a good alternative. So you can see that Earth Science Resources for Teachers. You're collaborating with all your Earth Science teachers right away. You know, make this available to them. You can add new, as you get new books coming in, you can add new material to it. Resources, links to different websites, volcanoes. Oh, and under here, here's a video of a caldera demonstration, activities from the National Park Service. So you can see that a lot of information can be put into this format. The LibGuide looks similar. You can do a very simple, this is a very simple one-page LibGuide. And LibGuides are searchable too. You can also see what I get ideas from other people, what they've included in it, but you can see that it's a little, the format's a little nicer, especially I'll show you some other ones that are even more well done than here. And the nice thing too is you can link directly to your catalog with the LibGuide. So when you have books in your catalog, you can create a link that goes right to the book. And people can then go in it to find out if it's available or where it is. This one actually is an interesting use and also a warning. This one is new arrivals. It's old. They stopped updating it in December of 2012. But every month when this person got their new books at this polytechnic school, they would add a page with a little description of the book. And what I would warn you against is doing here and making the colors such that the writing is illegible. And you can see the book here. Okay, so this takes, those books are obviously connected to the catalog, and it probably is no longer connected, and which is why I couldn't get there. I was just curious because you can also connect to Amazon, but it would be really nice if we could read this. So be careful of the backgrounds you choose for your boxes and make sure that you use contrasting colors that are easier to read. It looks like this might be black, and white shows up quite a bit better, although the covers stand out very nicely. That's the other thing, you can upload covers, and so it makes it quite attractive for somebody using it. They can, we all judge a book by its cover, and you can see that this makes it very nice to pick out. You can kind of tell from just looking at the cover if it might be something that you want, if it would appeal to you, if it's the right age level, etc. So the one I showed you had just a single page. That first one I showed you, and actually the new book one had multiple tabs. This has even more tabs. This one, they're actually, we're using the LibGuide as a as their website. So they had everything about the library, everything they'd want to communicate with the users here, because they have about the library, library policy, library services, library staff, book reviews, website evaluation, your local public library, nice information about what might be local, what's good, how to donate books. So this is a little broader. There's fewer individualized resources, although, let's see, well, plagiarism, each box you can create what you want, so you could put, this is more of an using it as a website for the whole library with information that students would need, rather than staying with one particular subject. And then there are, I think I've directed you and shown you the LibGuide from here. There are a bunch more at William Patterson. And you can take a look at the ones that they have here as for ideas on how to organize and create your LibGuides. So here we go. So this is the one we've been on. I think we've been on this one for this, and you can see how she's divided it up into many different types of information. It makes it easier, and then you divide the page up with additional information in boxes that makes it easy to use within the boxes. So what you're going to need to do is decide on a topic. If you're in a library, choose one that would be helpful for you. As long as you have, what you're going to do is you'll have an URL that you're going to share with me. You can generate a URL. You can also share it with your with people in your school after you've completed it. You won't, once you're not a student here, you won't be able to update it anymore, but you can continue to share it. And it's a great thing to have to show one that you've created to if you're campaigning for the funds to implement LibGuides within your library. So once you've decided on your topic, let me know the topic and I'll approve it. Begin to collect your resources and create annotations. You're going to need 30 resources, I think I say, and 3 or 5 tabs, I'm not sure, but you can, slowly begin to add, just set aside things as you find them. And then I have written to the library, and they should be sending you something out with information about how to sign in for your LibGuide. You can get to the LibGuides through the Cheng Library and go under Research Guides, and then go ahead and choose a subject. I'm going to go back to Ed Leadership. I'm sorry, Educational Research. Just go to one. And once you get your credentials, you will go to the bottom of the page and do log on to LibGuides. And I had logged on already, so it'll bring you, you're going to have credentials just for logging on to the LibGuides. They may or may not match what you use for, they won't match what you use for Blackboard and email, but you'll get, it should use your email address and then a specific password, which I think you can update. So you can go in, and this is what you'll see, where you will be doing your updating of your LibGuide, your creation of your LibGuide. And I'm not going to go into it right now, but here you see the URL that you would share with me. And there's different ways to change the layout, and we will look at that later, but you can go in and not today. I think I have a I think I have a lecture just this, but you don't I don't want to get to that right away. I don't want to add too much. I want to wait until you get your login. I just wanted you to start thinking about this in terms, this is due, I think, the last day of class. So I just wanted you to start thinking about collecting information and beginning to go forward with this, as well as introducing the topic of LibGuides as something to be aware of and be useful for you as you're doing reference. Let's see. LibGuide. 30 different sources with short annotations, 1 to 2 sentences, 5 different tabs, organized in some logical fashion. You don't need to use APA format, but you should include either the location in your library, the call number, or a link to an actual source, link to Amazon, so that we can go and read more about it. And so there's more information here. And oh, here's the accessing and creating LibGuides, the instructions for doing LibGuide. All right. Oh, here it is. It's this kind of day. So multiple types of material of media. You need a home page, you need the annotations, 30 resources, and minimum of 5 tabs. So this is one that was done by the student I was telling you about, who had been a teacher and of English, and she did this great. She put it together because this was what she wanted. She would continue to use in her classroom until she became a librarian. But she organized it. You can organize it any different way that makes sense to you. Here she put information that students would use across here, and then put a separate teacher resources tab so that teachers could go in and use this also. Additional titles of interest. And databases where you can go in and find material for him, so on him. So you can see how nice and organized this is for somebody to use, for a student to use. Oh, what I wanted to indicate, make sure you understood, or make sure I showed you, is that your LibGuide should remain private. There's several different statuses. You can do it with unpublished. You can go unpublished to begin with, but when you go to share it with me, it has to be moved from unpublished to private. You will get it as unpublished. Do not use published. This puts it onto the Chang Library site and makes it available to anybody who searches for it. Private means you have to have the URL in order to access it. So you want to keep your publication status as either unpublished or private. And it has to be private in order for me to see it once you share it with me for me to grade. All right. SpringShare, I just wanted to let you know, that's the company that has created this this software, and there are quite a few librarians that use it. It is not super expensive, but it's not super cheap either. I would see, if you wanted to do it, if you could get your district to go in on it, so that you can, there's pricing for school libraries. You can share the cost. And then we talked about getting started already. So now I want to move on from the LibGuide to the reference interview. And I have finally, this is an assignment that we're redoing because of accreditation, and I have finally finished rewriting, hopefully for the last time, rewriting the directions. And so I'm changing the due dates once again for this. I originally had the reference list due this week, but I'm going to have it due 11/13, and the paper itself will be due when 12/4. You'll have Thanksgiving week in there where you won't have any assignments to work on the paper. What is the reference interview paper? Everything I'm telling you, I'm going to be posting is posted to under assignments in a document, but I just want to go over it with you. So the purpose of the assignment is to provide you with some insight into the reference interview through the observation of professional librarians in action, and to engage in an inquiry project that includes research. You need to do a literature review on the research, on the reference transaction and the reference interview. Need to find 5 to 7 scholarly articles pertaining to the reference interview. And when you're looking for these articles, I'd like you to find one that includes research that includes quantitative study, a qualitative study, and a mixed method study. So quantitative research is basically experimental research, where you isolate a variable and manipulate it. It's sometimes called experimental or quantitative, and the research in this research you take an active role in setting up an observation or experiment to isolate a variable and understand its effect on something else. The goal is to figure out the effect of what a particular approach is. And so it's also defined as the systematic empirical investigation of observable phenomena via statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. So it usually involves math and statistics, in some kind of descriptive statistics. You might be manipulating a variable to do with, let's see an example. So if you have students test at a reading level, and then you have them do free reading for, they've been doing free readings for 10 minutes a week, 10 minutes a day for the week, for several weeks. You take a test, you increase it to 20 minutes a day, take another test, you'll see if there was a statistically significant difference between the first and the second test. And there's lots of different tests that are involved in quantitative research. Qualitative research is using of systematic observations to reach conclusions. You generally don't set out to manipulate, you set out to observe and record what you're seeing. An example is a case study. You are going to be doing systematic observations and basically qualitative research in this project because you're going to be observing. You are kind of injecting a variable, a manipulation, in that you're going in and asking a question, but it's not the same as manipulating the amount of time spent on something, or like medical studies that look at how 1 aspirin does versus 2 aspirin, et cetera, et cetera. So and qualitative research is usually written up in non-statistical terms, and the observations are written down. So what you're doing is basically a qualitative research study in this project. Then mixed methods includes the use of more than one method of data collection or research. So you'll see some quantitative aspects to the research and some qualitative aspects to the research. If you cannot find, take a look and see what's out there in terms of these different kinds of research when you do your literature review. You may or may not find it when it comes to reference interviews. But I would like you to be thinking about these things as you look for your 5 to 7 scholarly articles. And I have on the under the assignments tab, I have some information about how to determine if an article is scholarly when you're doing your searching. One of the databases I suggest searching is library literature. There's a library literature database, which I will actually show you in a minute. Let me finish going through this. So the literature review, once you find these 5 to 7 scholarly articles, you need to synthesize this research in about 3 to 4 pages at the beginning of your paper, and that's going to be the foundation for your provide the foundation for your observations and what you're going to compare your observations against in terms of what you see versus what the literature shows. Then you're going to create a research question designed to elicit a reference interview during your transaction with a reference librarian. I need to approve your questions so that I can make suggestions how we can make it more likely to create that kind of back and forth. If you asked a directional question or a ready reference type of question, you're not going to get the reference interview. So we need to work to develop a question that should prompt the reference librarian that you approach to ask you additional questions. The other thing I want to mention here, and I think I might have mentioned it before, make sure the person you're approaching actually is a librarian and not just the person behind the circulation desk. You may have to ask for the reference librarian or for somebody to help you with a research question. And a reference question, I'm sorry, rather than research question. So your research question in this study is going to be a reference question that you're going to go out and ask. Your data collection will consist of notes taken on your observations, and you'll either taken during or right after you ask your reference question in person at 2 different libraries. So I'm wanting you to ask your question at 2 different libraries so you can compare compare and contrast. You're going to write basically write out your observations and compare how they did. Compare them to what a good interview is, and then compare them to how they did to each other. So the body of your paper will consist of the lit review, you should discuss where you completed your observations. Tell me the type of the library, not the name of the library. Identify the community being served and highlight any interesting observations about the library that you plan to discuss later on. Share the reference question you asked and why you chose this question. Describe the technology you used to collect and organize your data. It could be paper and pen. You might have taken notes on a computer. You might have used a Word document, Google Docs. How did you keep your data, how did you collect your data, and what format was it in order for you to analyze it? That's part of what we want to talk about with this paper. Then you're going to give an overview of your experiences at each of the 2 libraries you visited, identify the types of questions that the librarian asked you, neutral, open, closed, whether and how the questions were answered, determine if all the aspects of a good reference interview were covered, compare the 2 observations, the 2 librarians, emphasizing differences between the 2. Could include a comparison of their styles, the way the library handles reference, etc. And some questions to consider might be, how did service vary between different libraries and librarians? What were positive and negative aspects of each experience? Finally, analyze your findings, your observations overall, and recommend improvements that could be made to increase the efficacy of reference interviews in their community in which the librarian is situated, and reflect on what you've learned from your observations. So the paper should be 10 pages double-spaced and APA format. The LibGuide for our class includes I think APA information, but there's also another LibGuide just on APA format that has some really good information. So I just wanted to talk about, okay, how to determine if your article is scholarly or peer review. It's only 2 pages, it's probably not scholarly. Even 5 pages is probably short for scholarly. It should include a reference list. Check the website of the journal and look at the instructions for authors. If the journal's peer reviewed, it'll let the authors know in the instructions. Sometimes a journal is peer reviewed but does not peer review every single article in it, so that's where the page comes in. So for example, in Children and Libraries is the journal for ALSC. They do peer review, but only of their research articles. So if you get something from that's 2 pages, you know that that's not a reference article. They haven't peer reviewed that. And when you're doing the database searches, you can filter for peer-reviewed or scholarly articles, and some databases include a little symbol on articles if they're peer-reviewed. And peer-reviewed, I'm using this term without defining it, but it means the article has been read by other experts in the field, sometimes called blind or double-blind reviews, depending on how they do it. The reviewers can accept the submission, ask for revisions, or just suggest rejecting it. The final decision is the editor's, but generally they go by what the reviewers have suggested, because generally you're trying to find somebody who is familiar with the article. So one of the databases I suggest highly looking in is Library Information Science and Technology Abstracts. and you can see here it obviously looks at material to do with library science. And you can see here there's something to click here for peer-reviewed journals that would hopefully return something on peer-reviewed journals. So I'm just going to if I can type, it would be good. So you can see that it says it comes out of an academic journal. It's kind of short. It's only 5 pages. That's probably a little bit short. So that may not, oh, this is in, what's it in? It's in Children's and Libraries. I would guess that that's not peer-reviewed. This one, let's find something that's a little bit longer. It's not giving me, it's giving me all 4 and 5 pages things I would suggest. It's not. This one is peer-reviewed. 22 pages. It's got cited references. And one of the things you can actually do, the cited reference thing is really good because it tells you what was cited in the thing. Now this is actually not a very good one for us to look at because all of the cited references appear to be in Spanish. But you can also limit and only get English material. 3 pages, 6 pages. So that link doesn't always work. You can also request through interlibrary loan, especially journals. They're really not, doesn't take that long to come in. And if you can't find what you need, you can just click on the request. You log in with your username, which is the what you use to sign in for your email, etc. And then your password is your 855 number. And they will send you an electronic copy of the article. So it pays to get started a little early, although there is a lot of material about the reference interview. It's something that's much studied. Okay, so that's it for today. Keep sending you back to that blank screen, sorry. And I will see you on the discussion board, and I will have a discussion board open for questions about both of these assignments. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and there also will be documents to back it up, but please, if you have any questions, post them there so that if other people have similar questions, I'll be answering everything all at once. So thank you very much.